Hey music fans, Ari Koinuma here. Welcome back to my channel. For today's episode of the Power of Music show, we are going to look at top 10 most iconic rock and roll intros according to Slash and Duff McKagan. First, what we're going to do is we're going to look at least my criteria, what makes a really effective, iconic song intros in rock and roll. And then we are going to look at a bunch of the songs that Slash and Duff were involved in and what makes them great intros to those songs. Now, before I begin, I will caveat this video by saying that I don't know if they were the ones who are really responsible in coming up with these intros. Certainly they could have been Axl Rose or Izzy Stradlin or Scott Weiland or other people in the band. I'm assuming that Slash and Duff were the composers behind these intros because I don't find the quality in these songs, in the music, that as far as I can tell, that they were individually involved in. And it's certainly, even when they're in the band, if the song seems to originate from other band members, they don't have intros of this quality. But I'm not the deepest researcher in terms of the lores of Guns N' Roses and Velvet Revolver and their solo careers. So if anybody who's watching this has other facts to offer, please feel free to add them in the comments. So before we start looking at the actual intros, let's look at the criteria in which I rated these intros in terms of what makes them great. The first criteria is that the material that awaits after the intro has to be worthy of the intro. I'll be the first one to tell you that not all songs need intros. There are some rock and roll songs, the best thing you could do is just hit the main riff and go. There's no need for intros. Only certain worthy material, whether it's the first verse or the song starts with a chorus or the main riff, really require more elaborate intro to set them up so that when that main thing about that song kind of arrives, you go, yeah, right? There's that moment of arrival, which is my second point, is that an effective intro creates the moment of arrival. An intro is a setup to whatever is the main thing in the main part of the song, and an effective intro should create this anticipation and create the moment of arrival. And speaking of anticipation, effective intros often, though not always, foreshadow what is to come, right? They might drop hints of the musical motif or ideas or even rhythm, harmony, just bits and pieces of the music that's to come, so that it doesn't totally feel like it's out of the blue. It's totally unrelated to the main part of the song. The intro should set up, like I said, the rest of the song. And finally, not all intros require this either, but if you can have it, it is great if the intro also delivers a sense of surprise. It's a tricky balancing act in that the intro should foreshadow what's to come, so you're anticipating and then building the anticipation so that the moment of arrival really means something to you. But it's also possible to still have some kind of twist in there, so when the moment of arrival happens, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I wasn't exactly expecting that, but it's kind of like the thing where you didn't realize you needed, right? Certain twists in an introduction leads you somewhere other than where you were expecting to go, but once you kind of get used to it, they're like, it's even more satisfying because of that unexpected twist that the intro delivers. Now, these intros, not all of them will satisfy all four of these criteria, and I kind of order them so that the more of these criteria that they satisfy, the higher they go in the pecking order. Okay, at number 10, I myself am kind of surprised to find this song in this spot. This might be quite an iconic opening riff, but from the criteria in which I set up to evaluate these intros, as great as this intro is, it just came up to number 10 on the list. Alright, I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, Ari, what the heck? This is like the most iconic opening ever in rock and roll. Why is it number 10? Well, I agree that it's very recognizable, it's very catchy, and it's really, really good intro. Don't get me wrong, it's an amazing intro to this song. However, it doesn't deliver a sense of surprise. There's not a feeling of like arrival at the moment when the first verse kicks in. It kind of like smoothes into the first verse just because the iconic riff that Slash plays just kind of stops playing, and then now it's time for Axl to sing, and it's a great opening to the song, but as an intro that really sets up and lands and like make way for the rest of the song, I just felt like this was not quite as dramatic as the other ones on the list. I would say though that it does set up one of the patterns that we'll see over and over in this list, is that Slash is off doing his thing, but then really Duff's bass playing, and in this case a bass melody, really creates this layer that only those two can really accomplish. That when I listened and went through like some of Slash's solo catalog, I did not see that kind of intros in any of his solo songs. Okay, number 9 is this equally amazing song, a huge hit. Let's listen to this intro. Alright, so at about a minute and a half, that's the longest intro section, and I suppose you could debate that that's not the whole intro. I mean, that song starts with the chorus, so that's not really intro. Well, I'm going to interpret the whole section so far as an intro because it kind of sets up this moment of the main riff and the first verse. And yes, they are using the chorus and the slow version of that as the intro. I put it slightly higher than Sweet Child of Mine, mostly because there is a sense of arrival. There is a moment when the band kicks in and you're like, yeah, like now we're gonna rock out. And the moment of arrival when the band starts rocking, it would not have been as sort of impactful or dramatic had not there been a slower, more leisurely and happy sounding intro setting that sort of more ballsier riff up. And when the riff kicks in, you're like, yeah, rock and roll. Okay, on number 8, yet another entry from the Appetite for Destruction album. This is slightly more deep cut, but this is a great intro. Let's listen to this one. Okay, so My Michelle intro is really needed in this song. Just imagine just jumping straight into that riff, and it would not have nearly the impact that this intro will add to it. And that it is nicely foreshadowing is in that the intro musically relates to the main riff. It's not exactly the same thing, but yet it's really close enough, and the whole descending kind of move, one more sort of a lyrical and slow, and then of course the main riff being much more hard hitting, but they really feel like they are sort of two sides of the same coin. And there is a sense of arrival, there's a sense of setting it up, and of course Duff adds his thing with bass after the Slash and the guitar players kind of, sets up the whole mood there, right? That's like a classic Guns N' Roses intro. Okay, this next one is yet one more from Appetite for Destruction, and you can start to see why that album is such a classic, because man, I listen to the album and go, oh man, there's so many quality intros in this song, and all of them kind of sets up the song that follows, and then I'm like, yeah, right? Brings the fanboy in me. Anyway, here is Nightrain. So on this one, instead of borrowing from the chorus, they actually borrow from the pre-chorus, which is an interesting choice, but it really works really well because this song's pre-chorus kind of creates a little bit more lighter, hesitating kind of part before kicking into the chorus. And instead of kicking into the chorus in the intro, it kicks into the main verse riff and groove. And it really works really well in terms of, again, creating the contrast so that when you get going on that, it's like, yeah, it's just rocking hard. And that sense of you're rocking hard only is strengthened by having an intro that kind of lays back. And funny enough, cowbells, just banging on the cowbells at the quarter note, that is one of the sort of the drummer's technique for creating like a holding pattern. Like cowbells typically don't have the sense of forward momentum as much as like hi-hat and right cymbals do. And so that's used very effectively here by Stephen Adler to just kind of hold back, so that it's like a slingshot, right? The cowbells in the drums kind of hold you back, so that boom, you can get going when you need to with the main riff. Okay, finally we are going to listen to something other than Appetite for Distraction, and this is actually one of my personal favorites, although it's in the number 6 slot. This is Velvet Revolver, Dirty Little Thing. Alright, I really love that intro. It just has such a punky forward momentum, like you're really about to take off, going way too fast, and that sense of danger. And yeah, you know, a bookish person like me telling you about it doesn't really do it justice, right? But unlike the other intros where it relied on the contrast between the main riff and the intro by usually having a slower intro, this one kind of gets going right away. And the difference is, of course, how the bass is played at first in the higher register and the drum groove holding back, so that when the main riff gets going on, the bass kind of hits the bottom and the drum groove just takes off. And although it's not much of a contrast between the intro and the main riff, it still has that sense of boom, you're taking off, you're off to the races. And of course it foreshadows the main riff because it's made out of the same material. I suppose the only thing missing is the sense of surprise. You know that it's coming, but the main material is certainly deserving of that moment of arrival and going off you go. That moment is really just satisfying in this song. Okay, we're staying on Velvet Revolver here. This one is a really great intro. In top 5 spot is a Velvet Revolver song now turned into Guns N' Roses canon as far as their live shows are concerned, Slither. That is an amazing intro to this song. The main material certainly is deserving of that lengthy and foreboding kind of intro. The intro has the same harmony as the chorus section, although it's very different in terms of arrangement, so you don't almost recognize it. But the foreshadowing is happening, and that is kind of like a great sweet spot where you don't recognize that it's related to the main song, but it really is, because obviously it doesn't sound super foreign either, right? Unrecognizable, but yet it's related to the main song in a subtle way. And then that contrast between slow and atmospheric and then to the ballsy main riff is such a transition. It's very dramatic. What can I say? It is a very effective intro. Okay, on number 4 slot is the lone Guns N' Roses song on this list that is not on their Appetite for Destruction album. This is You Could Be Mine. man, if that song was used as like the opening theme of like a TV show or like a movie, like in a movie opening credit, I mean that sense of arrival, right, when that main riff kick in is like the great like title card moment, and man, that will certainly get me going as far as being excited about watching whatever is to come. That song was featured in Terminator 2 soundtrack, which is an amazing movie, but that's beside the point. So I think that intro is really fascinating because in my mind when I listen to it, there is definitely a sense of surprise or unexpectedness when the main riff arrives. Now I know that it's about to come. I knew that the arrival it was anticipated in terms of what the main riff is. It still feels like, whoa, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that. Perhaps because that bend field guitar riff that's in the intro is so strong and so iconic that maybe I was expecting that to be part of the main riff, which it isn't directly. The intros have the same kind of chords that the main riff is using, so that part is not a surprise. Certainly foreshadowing it's related. But then right when the band transitioned to the main riff, the way that it goes into the ascending part, right, that seems to be really taking off in one direction, but then just kind of comes back to what it was, but with a different riff from what we were hearing so far. I think that might be what's contributing to the sense of surprise, but yet when it arrives, it is just so satisfying. You just have been sitting there excited about what to come, and when it comes, it's certainly a rewarding experience to arrive at the moment and then just listen and take in the grandiose gesture of this song. It's really magnificent. Okay, on the number 3 spot is a very familiar territory here. It's a live staple. In fact, as far as the set list I reviewed, this is often the opener to the show. And imagine the excitement that people feel of seeing Guns play live, and this is the kickstart song. It's so easy. It is short, but it's so powerful, and that there is a sense of surprise in terms of when it arrives, because this intro is could have been longer, right? I mean, it feels like it's really setting up something awesome and rocking, but then it just kind of gets straight to the point, and there is a bit of a sense of surprise in terms of what the opening riff ends up being, because really the introduction is kind of stays on like one chord throughout, and then the main riff introduces a lot more fresher, different notes that was not in the intro. So that is part of what creates the surprise in this opening riff. But if you didn't have the intro, that riff certainly wouldn't have been as great. And just for a number 2 song in the album, this song has a kick-ass intro, and I can see why they would use this as the opener to their live shows. Okay, on the number 2 slot is this classic from Velvet Revolver, Sucker Train Blues. It's so hard to just stop the song right there, because that after intro like that I just want to listen to the whole song. But anyway, I digress. It's a classic Duff McKagan bass line, and the foreshadowing and the punky attitude, the sense of danger, the momentum. But then when it transitions to the main riff, there is kind of an offbeat drum thing that kind of catch you by surprise a little bit. It's like it kind of leans in and like kicks in like a half a beat sooner than you were expecting to. So it's just kind of like, ooh, and then you're off to the races, right? That sense of surprise, again, the first time you hear it, it might go whoa, but then after you get used to that, it is very, very satisfying to have that little twist when you kick into the main part. That the siren parts featured in this intro is actually a hardware bullhorn that Scott Weiland used in live shows too, which really adds to that whole lo-fi punk DIY kind of attitude. And it again adds to the sense of danger that something is amiss, something that's not supposed to be happening is about to happen. And then when the main riff arrives, again the whole intro is like in one chord, and then if the main riff started out with the same chord, it would still be a good sense of arrival. And a lot of intros lead to basically where the opening chord of the main part is, but this one's main riff is not that chord. It eventually goes there, but where it lands is not that chord. So that's part of what creates the surprise as well. Alright, I think you probably know what song is in number 1 spot at this point, but before we get to that, I would mention 3 runners-up that they are really great too. It's just compared to the other songs, again, I was like, oh, they might not be quite top 10. In fact, it really kind of pained me to leave She Builds Quick Machines off the list because that's one of my all-time favorite rock and roll songs. I really love that song, but as far as the intro is concerned, that one is pretty predictable, tried and true affair of just having the main riff kind of played in a lo-fi kind of thing that all of a sudden comes alive in terms of the production and drum beats and things like that. So as far as how well the intro is written, not as strong as the other songs. Alright, and on the very number 1 spot, it has to be this song, Welcome to the Jungle. I think I have to put this song among like probably like the very best rock and roll intros ever. It's just so well done. And what surprises me about that intro is how much of a surprise it delivers. The intro is in one key, and then the main riff is in a totally different key, meaning the two sections. In this case, in terms of the foreshadowing, perhaps it's not the best foreshadowing kind of intro, in that the intro is actually not all that well related to the rest of the song. Perhaps the only thing that is similar is the whole descending nature of each of the lines in the intro, which the main riff is also a descending kind of riff, right? So there's a whole similar kind of gesture or same kind of arc that's setting up. So it doesn't sound totally out of the blue, totally out of the character. It seems to be setting up what's to come really well. But then when the thing arrives, it's a bit of a surprise, because you were in this one tonal center and all of a sudden, boom, in just a matter of a few seconds of transition, you are into a different tonal center. This one also has several different tempos that it goes through. It goes from slow to fast. And then of course that there's the guitar riff and then the bass melody coming in to set up another layer. It just has fairly complex things going on here. It really takes a master songwriter arranger to be able to craft an intro like that. All the songs on the list are really well written songs, obviously, and these intros are super duper effective. Welcome to the Jungle, though, I feel deserved the #1 spot, because it is actually not very simple at all, and that especially the tempo change that it goes through and the key change that it goes through right before the main song arrives. It's not a beginner type material. They really knew what they were doing with this song. And then in fact, I would say that in all their catalog after that, I don't know that they've achieved this height in terms of songwriting, composition, arrangement type mastery that they displayed in this song. And it's the first song of the debut album, and it's a classic. They certainly reached certain kind of peak there, and for good reason. In closing, I would say that it's been a few years since Duff and Slash rejoined Guns N' Roses, and of course I've checked out all the singles that they've released recently, and those songs really don't get up to the caliber that their songwriting was in The Appetite for Destruction, for sure, right? And they certainly don't have this great of intro, so I don't know to what extent they've been really involved in songwriting of the recent songs, although it looks like they're being credited for them. I really hope that classic Duff Slash intros to make a showing in one of the or many of the future Guns N' Roses songs, because man, those two, these intros are like near and dear to my heart in terms of, you know, how good a rock and roll intro can be, and I'm just such a sucker for these intros because you know, again, that moment of arrival when the song kicks in, it's just like it's the moment I live for, you know. Alright, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching. I hope that this video gave you some new thoughts to ponder as far as what makes Guns N' Roses the great band that they are. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about it. That will help me keep going with this channel a lot. Thank you very much.